Welcome back to the BTS Happy Hour podcast. I'm your host, Andrea. With me tonight is Morgan.
Hey, everybody.
So today we're going to start with a troubling story that's been in the spotlight lately, and that is that K-pop idols that have taken their own life. And most recently, there was an idol named Guhara who was part of the girl group Kara and then had a solo career. It appears like she took her own life on November 24th. And 2 months ago, or actually last month, October 14th, there was Sully, who was part of the girl group FX, who took her own life. We know that. And then another example that I know about from 2017, that was a really big story, was Jung Yoon from SHINee, who took his own life as well. So that seems like it's something that's been in the forefront lately.
Happens in K-pop quite a bit, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not sure why this... I don't know if it seems more prominent for K-pop than in other American music, or if it's just happening more there than here. I don't know if it's perception or just actually happening more.
Right. Well, what are your thoughts on this? You start off.
Well, we know for a fact that K-pop idols are under a lot of pressure just from their companies and the contracts that they're in, and maybe they feel a lot of pressure to, be perfect and learn everything that they have to learn, like dances and songs and everything, and they're under a lot of pressure to maintain their weight, especially for the female idols. So I think they just take a lot of that internally, and that's a lot of stress for anybody.
Yeah, I mean, when I first encountered these stories about K-pop idols committing suicide, I thought, well, it must be a K-pop specific problem, right? That's your first assumption when encountering this sort of thing. But when you look into it a little bit deeper, suicide rates in Korea are just high generally, right? I think, like, according to some accounts, they have the fourth highest suicide rate in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So this may just be emblematic of what's going on in the country.
It's more their whole culture than K-pop.
And if you do a little bit more digging into it, and not to say that I totally understand everything that is, causing suicide rates to be this high in Korea, but there's a couple different theories, there's a couple explanations, and they all sound roughly correct to me. One of them is that Korea has a culture of high achievement, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really depends on its citizenry to do well in school. I mean, they're a country that I don't know if this is factually correct or not. They cancel flights on the day that they have their entrance exams or whatever, so that people don't get distracted and things like that. It's a very high achieving society. People are expected to do 16 hours of schoolwork a day. Growing up in America, we were never expected to do 16 hours of schoolwork a day. It's just a very high achieving society. And part of why this is that, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but Korea is just a very resource poor nation. Korea has nothing naturally strong about it. There's, if you go to Russia, there's natural gas. You go to the United States, there's oil and timber, and there's farmland, and there's all sorts of things. Korea really doesn't have these natural advantages. So every single strength that they have to cull basically came from the people, right? Like if you make a Samsung or if you make a Hyundai or whatever, it's not based on the fact that your country makes a lot of steel or whatever. It's just that your citizenry, your people are experts. They become knowledgeable. They are educated, things like this. The people are its natural resource. And this sort of ties into K-pop. Because what is K-pop? K-pop is essentially Korea leveraging the people as a natural resource. And make no mistake, they do leverage it as a natural resource because the government has actually invested money into the spread of this culture, right? Mm-hmm. Does the United States invest money into Taylor Swift or Michael Jackson or Beyonce or Hollywood? Do they give them government dollars and say, hey, spread our American culture everywhere because this is one of the many important industries? No, they don't. Even though, I don't know, maybe they should, because it is one of America's important industries. But they don't even bother to do that, right?
Right.
They invest money in things like corn or steel.
Well, that's what
Right?
that's what we
Right?
subsidize with
Yes.
our tax money.
We subsidize that. That shows you where the government's priorities are in America, at least, like corn, steel, things like that. They don't give Taylor Swift any money, even though it could be argued that Taylor Swift is an asset. She's a resource. Culture is a resource. It is, right? The United States, as far as I know, doesn't give Apple a bunch of subsidies and say, hey, spread U.S. technology everywhere. Oh, they might. I just might be speaking in an uneducated fashion on this. But Korea has to do all of these things because they don't have a very obvious natural resource to leverage except for its people. And that shows up in the pressure it exerts on its people. You have to become educated. You have to do well on your exams and things like this, blah, 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 right? And if you don't grow up in that country, I don't know if you can necessarily relate to that sort of pressure, but that pressure definitely exists. And I think it contributes to their high suicide rate. And other people agree. You can go ahead and Google it. This sort of thing is not news or anything. So it ties into K-pop. It ties into the broader culture. This is why they have a higher suicide rate. It's unfortunate, but at the same time, it is also what makes K-pop, it is part of what makes K-pop something you like. Because they place so much emphasis on it, right? Their people, even in the pop music venue, they work so much harder than people in America. Is that not part of why you like it? It is. But it is also part of what contributes to this really, really demanding culture that causes some people to, unfortunately commit suicide.
Yeah, it's a tough industry, and so there's a lot of competition. So of course, people have to work very hard to get where they are.
So yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword. Part of why K-pop acts are so strong and why their work ethic is what it is because of this culture of high achievement. But then that culture of high achievement probably does contribute to the pressure that a lot of people feel.
Now, do you think the people, there's some idols that are speaking out now about all the pressures they're facing and how, they have to deal with anxiety or depression or whatever, mental health issues that they have. Do you think that's because they're susceptible to that, or do you think that the K-pop is so tough that it's affecting, normal people, just all the pressure that they have? Just people...
I'm sure it's super tough. I think these people, they work 16-hour days, and it's just a very difficult life. It may seem somewhat glamorous to some people from the outside looking in, but I'm sure it's very, very difficult. I'm sure it's a tough life to live. Even for the people who are quote unquote on the top, I'm sure it's a difficult life to live. And that has to contribute to it. So on the one hand, it does produce better product because the people have to work so hard, right? That's part of what you like about K-pop. The people work so hard, the product is so good, it's so refined, but it comes at a cost. It comes at the cost of mental health, it comes at a cost of people's anxiety. There's a give and take. There's a pro and con to everything, and this is just one of them.
Probably whatever tendencies they had are more exaggerated by all the pressure that's on them. So if you have anxiety or if you have depression, it's going to be like amplified.
Right. And, and you would think, oh, you should just speak up and you should just say, hey, this is too tough on me or whatever. But let's be honest, in the broader Korean society, people don't speak up and say this is too tough on me. Everybody has it tough. There's not just K-pop artists, right? Everybody has it tough. It's not, it's not necessarily as tough as like a destitute third world country. But if you are a listener in the United States, and I can guarantee you that things are comparatively tough on these people. Mm-hmm. And it's not even a third world country. It's a first world country. Korea is, I'm not trying to act like, hey, this is the worst of the worst. And, you just might walk outside and be hacked to death or whatever. Like, no. It's still better than that. It's still a first world country. But Is it as comfortable as you have it as a middle class American? No, it is not. People have to work harder. They are under more stress. The burden of performance is higher in this country. It's a cultural thing. Like they are culturally bound to this burden of performance that you are not bound to. And part of that is just bad. It's just luck, right? You were born in a country that is structurally very wealthy and very powerful. That has to do with a lot of things: geography, natural resources, right? These are all just structural things that it's just luck. You were born in a country that is structurally very powerful, very wealthy, et cetera, et cetera. They were born in a country that is not these things. And yet Korea is a very wealthy country. Why? Because it has leveraged its human talent. For the past, it's not even a long time, by the way. If you go back to 1950 even, let's say the end of the Korean War, Korea was considered a poor country. Very, very poor. By the time like 1980, 1990 rolls around, Korea's just suddenly considered a first world, super rich, a country. Suddenly. It was considered a miracle, in fact. But then what is that miracle? What is it based on? It is not based on any sort of found natural resource like, Dubai found oil, right? It's like, well, everybody in Dubai is rich. Like, why? Duh, because they found oil. But what did they find in Korea? They didn't find anything. They leveraged this culture of taking advantage of their only natural resource, which is the people. Every single person has to study hard. Every single person has to become a natural resource for this country. And that is what they have gone on to this day. And K-pop is actually a part of that. It's actually very apropos to what we're talking about here, because K-pop has become one of the natural resources. It's like a Samsung, right? What is Samsung? Samsung doesn't exist because Korea found a bunch of awesome natural resources on its soil. Samsung exists because Korea educated enough people to make really good technology. And they took natural resources that came from other places and they made good products. That's why that's why everybody knows that name, because it's a great company that makes good products. But does it leverage natural resources in any way? No, absolutely not. It absolutely does not leverage any sort of natural resources. And there's a lot of companies in America like Google and Apple that are somewhat similar, but they also follow a bunch of American corporations that did leverage natural resources, right? Like Standard Oil or U.S. Steel or whatever. America grew strong on companies that leveraged our natural resources, that leveraged our geographic strength. So it's not the same story. Korea had to start from... They had a lot of disadvantages. We had a lot of advantages that they did not. And it's no coincidence, I think, that the people who live there are under an immense amount of pressure that we don't understand. There's no coincidence. So unfortunately, that is going to probably contribute to a higher suicide rate.
I think
fourth in the world.
The female idols, they're even talking about they get a lot of cyberbullying and a lot of like criticism online from like netizens, is what they call it, the Korean people online. So
yeah, they probably get a lot of that.
If they are just taking it harder, or is it like, should they just not even be looking at like Twitter and Instagram and stuff like that?
I mean, my advice to people in general is to not look at that stuff, but I know it's hard not to.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
If I was a celebrity, I would not be on Twitter. Like, you don't want to see everything that people are saying about you.
I would obviously the advice is not to look at that stuff, but hey, what can you do? And also, a lot of these people, their job is to interact with fans. So can they truly just ignore it all? No.
Right.
So
a lot of times they'll do a V Live or something that's like an Instagram Live, and then someone will just say like really negative things like on the live thing. And, like,
right.
They can't avoid it.
They can't avoid that. So it's not realistic, I think, to just say avoid it. Right. If you're just a regular person and you don't want to encounter negative things, you could totally cut yourself off. But if you are a celebrity of any sort in this industry, you do have to interact. You do have to sort of look at this stuff. So it's not realistic to say just don't look at it. You're gonna have to look at it. So then you have to say, well, just ignore these negative parts. But that's difficult. That takes a certain sort of discipline that not everyone has. And also keep in mind that a lot of these people we're talking about, they're young. We're talking about people who are
Yeah,
20,
like really young idols.
23 even. Like think about, well, if you're not 20 or 23 yet, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. But let's say you're older than that. Try to remember when you were that young, you really cared about what people said about you, right?
Yeah, and it really affected
it's
you.
really hard. Yeah, it's really hard. As you get older, sure, it gets easier for you to just sort of ignore what you don't feel like engaging with and just ignore it. But it takes a certain amount of maturity. It takes a certain amount of experience to get to that point. And you have to remember that a lot of these K-pop stars, by definition, they're very young. And you can say, well, they've been working and training and all of this for so many years. Yes, true, but they're still young people, right? And let's not forget that. So, for like a 22-year-old person to, have to encounter this drumbeat of negativity, and they can't even really just cut it off because part of their job is to interact with people, right? If you could just shut it all off, sure, we would just say, hey, what are you doing? Just shut it all off. But you can't. What person in Korean pop, what person can afford to just shut it all off? Nobody. That's part of their job. They have to interact with people. At least they have to, be out there and make themselves available, right? So it's very difficult to just say, hey, just shut it off. You as a normal person, of course, you can shut it off. You don't have to go on Twitter. You don't have to look at the comments. You don't have to do any of that. They do have to do that. So it's very difficult to say that. So that does probably affect them. And, I'm one of those people who just says, hey, who cares? Internet comments, who cares, right? But I'm not a known person out there. Like, I'm not a celebrity. Like, what if I was a celebrity and, people know who I am, and then I got to read these comments like, oh, this is what people think of me? I can't say for sure how I would react to that because I don't have that experience. So it wouldn't be fair for me to say, it's like, oh yeah, it wouldn't bother me. I would just ignore it. I would just not think about it. But I don't know because I have not experienced that. So it's not fair for me to say that. I would probably be affected by it. I'm a human being like any other person. I don't want to hear people say negative things about me. And if I saw tons of negativity directed my way and I had to look at it through the course of my occupation, it would probably affect my mental health, probably, right? So I think that is a fair criticism or observation of what's going on.
And I think with American artists, it seems like they have more freedom to have outlets for their stress. Like they'll like do something athletic, or they'll like, oh, I'll go into the studio and make music or something. And they have like more freedom to do things. And sometimes like they do drugs, they'll like smoke weed. Like they're allowed to do that. I mean, not allowed, but like they just do it because you could just do whatever you want as an American artist, it seems like. And I don't think that even comes into play in K-pop.
Yeah,
like, there's like, there's
not.
no way I can't do any drugs. That's not even an option.
Yeah, so they don't have a lot of options. Bottom line, they don't have a lot of options. So, right? And just think, you've probably, hey, listen, I think everybody's had this experience. You've gone online, you got into an argument online, right? And then you posted something. It's like you're arguing with somebody back and forth, and then you went to your job. But in the back of your mind, you were thinking about that argument online. And then you sat down at lunchtime or even before lunchtime, and you checked on that argument. And you're still sort of worked up, and you're in it. That's the thing that's dominating your psyche at that moment, right? This online argument that you're in. If that's happened to you as a normal person, think about what it's like as a celebrity, right? The stuff that's said about you and towards you online, it just can weigh on you, right? I'm a nobody, and I've been in arguments with people online, and I went back and checked at lunch, like, well, what did this person say? What is my response going to be? Right?
Well, do
We're
you
just
think
two nobodies arguing. So imagine if you're somebody. Yeah.
do you think some of the responsibility is with the company? Because
Um.
sometimes they're saying like, oh, Sully, really wanted SM to pursue like legal action after certain
No,
people said
no, I
things
don't think that.
online.
I don't think that's true. I don't know what the laws are in Korea. Maybe they're a little bit different, but here in the U.S., like you can't really pursue people for being assholes to you online, right?
Yeah, it's very difficult
That's not a thing. It's like
bar.
you're a jerk to me
Like
online,
you have to prove that they
right?
caused you monetary damage
Right.
somehow.
There's just you're an asshole online, and yeah, that's what happens. There are many of these people online. You just that's just uh, that's what you get. You went online. When I feel stressed about it, and I feel like I don't want to argue with people online anymore, here's what I do. I just don't.
Yeah, and then you like turn off
I turn off
notifications on
notifications.
whatever thing you were.
Yeah, I was like, I don't want to see this anymore, and I go do something else, right? And that's healthy. That's healthy. If this thing that's producing negativity and just creating a negative impact on your life, just shut it off, cut it off. That's a smart thing to do. That's a healthy thing to do. But unfortunately, in this industry, you really don't have that option. You still have to engage with all of these, I don't know, quote unquote fans. Are they really even fans? So a lot of them have negative things to say. So I don't know that they're even fans, but you still have to make yourself available, right? You have to be out there. And there's always this, in the back of your mind, there's always this understanding that, hey, this is me. I'm out there, right? Your reputation is at stake. Me as a nobody, I have the blanket of anonymity. If I get into a heated argument with somebody online, I could always just disengage from it and just say whatever, and just never think about it again. And it will not affect me because you know why? They don't know who I am. I don't know who they are. It's over. It just recedes into the depths of the internet, right? But if you are famous, this type of stuff doesn't recede. It follows you for a long time. And there is always that understanding. There is always that nagging sensation that, well, this is following me. You know, what are people saying about me? It's going to follow me, whatever they're saying about me right now. I can turn it off. I can turn the power button off all I want, but it doesn't go away. It is more difficult for these people to get over that sort of thing. And it has more impact on them. And yeah, it's negative. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing at all, especially when you consider that, hey, a lot of these things, it's just people who don't like something that you're doing, right? It's literally just like some people who just don't like what you're doing or don't agree with you or whatever. Why should this have such a large impact on your life? But
Yeah, I think those kind of comments, like if it's an American artist, like usually they have enough of like an ego or like a self-esteem that they can ignore stuff like that, where it's like, oh, someone who hates your music, someone who's just always like dragging you online or whatever. I don't think K-pop, they have people with such like big self-esteem all the time.
I just think that people have way more power over a K-pop artist's life than they do over, Ariana Grande's life. Ariana Grande doesn't care what any one or 1,000 people think on Twitter.
Right.
It doesn't have any impact on her. She could ignore that. Absolutely. And at the end of the day, that's healthy for her. Because if she has to worry about what 1,000 people or even anyone thinks, that would not be good. She can totally ignore it. But part of what has made K-pop so strong, so popular, is that they leverage these close relationships. They have these close relationships with people who are fans, right? They have fan signings, for instance. That's just such a weird thing for a Western artist. Western artists don't have these fan signings, right? For your most diehard fans, they don't do that. As far as I know, they don't do that. They leverage the breadth of a fan base. So they want as many shallow fans as possible, right? People who will buy a ticket, who will buy maybe one piece of merch. That's what they want. They want as many people like that as possible. But K-pop,
Yeah.
they do want to leverage the super diehard fans who don't buy one ticket, who don't buy one piece of merch. They buy 7 tickets.
Well, that's how you get into those fan signs. It's like you buy multiple
Yes,
albums.
exactly. And the evidence is in how you get into a fan sign. How do you get into a fan sign? Look at all the rules for how you get into a fan sign, okay? Is it ever I bought a ticket and I got lucky? No. I bought 7 tickets and I bought lucky. I bought 20 albums. I bought 50 albums. Who
Right.
buys 50 albums?
Right. Whereas
There's no American artist who says, "Hey, our business model is based on people who buy 50 albums."
no, but the way to meet Taylor Swift is like you go to a concert and someone decides, oh, you get to go to the rep room. That's like random.
Yeah, it's random. But Taylor Swift would never ask any of her fans to say, "Hey, be a fan that buys 50 albums." She would never ask that. She would never ask that. She doesn't want to ask that. She doesn't want to. I don't think she wants to even cater to a fan base that is that rabid, that is that, quote unquote insane. But K-pop does. Now, you can say, are they doing their artists a disservice by catering to, sasaengs and like the crazy fans? Yeah, probably they are. But that's where the money is at the moment, right? They don't have the broad fan base of a Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift has a broad fan base. She has a fan base in America, in Europe, in Asia, everywhere. I'm sure she has fans everywhere. She doesn't need to cater to people who are going to buy 50 albums. She's perfectly fine catering to people who will buy one album, maybe one piece of merch. She'll make tons of money off this system. And I'm sure she wants to make money off of these people. She doesn't want to encourage a person who will buy 50 albums of hers, right? She doesn't even want to encourage those types of people.
Yeah, she has stalkers too.
She has stalkers too.
It's
And
gotta be dealt with.
I'm sure that she doesn't want to encourage any more stalkers, right? But it's almost like I gotta say this, a lot of K-pop acts, their companies do want to encourage the stalker-ish fans amongst them. But those same fans, and I'm not saying they're all evil or they're all stalkers or anything like that. If you're one of those people, I'm not saying that about you. But at the same time, if you are one of those fans who have invested so much into it, you probably have stronger opinions than, what is normal, right? So then let's say you have a negative opinion. It's going to hit harder. It's going to hit home with these artists a little bit more. They're sort of encouraging this sort of behavior, right?
Yeah, even BTS, like they have it's like if you sign up for Weverse, then you got to sign up for WePly, then you got to get an army membership, and then like
right.
all this different
they're
stuff. Just to
leveraging
get,
they're leveraging this like next level devotion that American artists just don't want to leverage, either because they can just afford not to leverage it, or they're not comfortable with it, or whatever it is. But a lot of K-pop acts, they leverage this next level devotion. And on the one hand, hey, I'm not saying if you have that next level devotion, you're a weirdo or you're bad or anything. You're probably a normal person and you're just super devoted to your bias. That's fine. But you do know that there are some people at that level that have a very poisonous relationship, right? That can turn negative. And it's this sort of interaction that weighs heavily on the psyche of K-pop artists, right? If these people say negative things, it really weighs heavily on them. They can't just ignore it or brush it aside like a Taylor Swift or an Ariana Grande. If they have one fan or even 1,000 fans that say negative stuff to them, they can just ignore them and say, I don't care. I don't care what the hell you think. But K-pop artists cannot afford to say that because they rely so heavily on these fans. And it's just a business model. It's not right or wrong. It's just it creates a sort of pressure that they face that American artists don't face.
What I have noticed is that there's been more idols lately that have been talking about their mental health issues. They've talked about, I felt this way in the past and have dealt with it, or they've said I'm taking a break from promoting, or their company said that they are. So maybe this is a good sign of...
I think it is a good sign. Yeah, I think it's a good sign. Like Mina has taken a couple months off. So I think it's a good sign. And hopefully the companies are more accepting of that and just let these people have some time off. They have such terrible schedules anyway.
Yeah,
so
that could be
it's
part of it. It's
understandable.
just the just continuous schedule
Yeah.
is adding to the stress. You
Yeah.
don't even have time to
So
think.
I don't think anybody would disagree that, yeah, this is a good thing that people respect mental health issues a little bit more, especially for people who are under such stress.
Definitely a good sign. So this has been a long time complaint for BTS Army, the fact that a lot of the content doesn't have any translations. So recently Big Hit finally said, well, I don't know if they said officially, but it looked like
Oh, they got a translator. I heard this.
they're hiring people to finally do some translating.
Okay. Well, what needs to be translated? Like,
Well, there was a hashtag that was trending of asking about this for Big Hit to do this. And what they wanted was, at the very least, the paid content. So if you bought a DVD of a BTS concert, or if you bought something like
even their
Bon
paid
Voyage,
content was not translated?
no, it didn't have it.
Oh.
It's like, wow, that's kind of
They
ridiculous.
needed a fan translation?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Like there were some
Yeah, they should pay somebody, obviously.
Brazilian fans. They bought the DVD of the Sao Paulo concert,
Oh.
and it didn't have Portuguese. It's like, well, everyone in Brazil, that's what they speak. They're not
Right.
speaking Korean or
Correct.
English
They speak
or
Portuguese.
whatever was on there.
True.
It's like, guys,
Learn Korean, I guess.
I don't know how they didn't think of this sooner, or why this was such an issue. Like, I'm really kind of puzzled by that.
Okay. Yeah. No, they should absolutely have a chance. I haven't bought any BTS merch or anything like that, but absolutely. I expect to, if I bought one, I expect to have a translation.
Yeah, especially if it was filmed in your country. It's like, that's what they speak here, so you
Right.
should take the trouble to
Right.
translate it in that language.
Oh, yeah. Jesus.
Number one.
Well, good on them. They finally bought a or several, because it's not just one translation, right?
Yeah.
You need Portuguese and you need English, obviously.
Now, if you go on V Live, and obviously they're speaking live, so that's not going to be translated in real time, but I always check back later, like 6 hours later or however many hours later, and they have the translations there.
But a fan translation, probably.
No, V Live, they do it. But
Oh,
that's
the
that's not
company does
run
it?
by it's not run by Big Hit, so I think that's why they have some
okay,
kind of
okay.
automatic system
I see.
that does it.
All right.
But the things that Big Hit is in control of, like a lot of times that isn't translated.
Well, I mean, just like another reminder that Big Hit's not necessarily a big company still.
Maybe they just didn't think of that. It's just one of the things that they overlook, because
Right.
like if you're on their YouTube channel, and they have
Oh,
videos
yeah.
all the time, but most of them are not translated, and I always have to go to like these other channels that have the translations.
Well, yeah, it's good for them to get a translator then. The
then-
end. Good.
No, and then you could say, oh, well, all these fan translators are going to be out of business. It's like, I'm sure they don't mind. There's
But
like,
I mean, there's no business. They
they're
don't make money.
overworked.
Yeah, this is not a business. They don't make money.
And it's people that are doing it because it's like, there's no other option.
Yeah.
So they're like, and
I'm sure they'd be happy to be out of business because
Yeah.
they don't make money doing it.
they would love to just sit back and just see something that's translated already.
Right.
You know?
Big Hit should be paying for this. Absolutely.
I'm
Yes.
just shocked that it took this long for.
Yeah, I
for
didn't.
them to figure that out.
I don't watch their V lives, so I don't know. Like, I haven't felt the pain,
Yeah.
but I would feel the pain if I was watching something. Oh, I kind of know. Like sometimes I watch like I guess I'm revealing myself, but like sometimes I watch like a twice when they're on like a show or something,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no translation. I think, oh, I don't know what the hell they're saying.
It's like, man, we're missing out. We're the international fans that
Right.
are like, we're losers. It's like we don't get to know what's
But let's be
going
real,
on.
you don't really watch them to know what they're saying anyway, so it doesn't matter. You pretty much get the gist.
Yeah, sometimes I watch a video and I don't have a translation, but it's still like
Yeah, I
entertaining
still get it.
anyway. It's like, well, I can look at them.
Right. I can look at them, and they're only doing one of two things. They're either doing a dance of some other group's thing, or they're yelling at each other, which is supposed to be funny. I'm pretty sure that's me boiling down every single Korean variety show. It's either dancing, some other group's dance, or like yelling at each other, and it's supposed to be funny. I don't know.
Yeah, and sometimes I can sort of tell what's
maybe
going
I'm not-
on just from context
I'm
and
not
like
really giving like their variety shows much credit.
like the sound effects can tell you like, oh, this is supposed to be funny. Okay, this is supposed to be whatever.
Right. I guess I'm not the right audience for it. I don't find their variety shows that funny. I'm sorry. I don't. I don't think the variety shows are that funny. I think the Korean sense of humor is just sort of, beyond me. I don't quite get it. It's a different culture, so I'm not going to say it's wrong or anything, but I don't find it funny. Whatever they find funny, I don't find funny. So it's whatever, you sort of watch it because you just want to see your favorites. I don't know, do stuff. But yeah, that's good. They got a translator. So
I'll
now
just
you
be
know.
happy if the YouTube channel, everything on there needs to have translation, because it's like YouTube. It's like, that's an American company. Like everything should be in English.
No.
Anyway.
YouTube can't. They can't determine what. You know how many videos in how many languages are just put on YouTube?
Well, how do they even do translations? Don't you just need to like press a button and it's like, well, let's there must be some kind of like auto translation.
Do you think that we've gotten to that point in technology? Oh, maybe we have actually.
Well,
no, I don't think we have though.
There's transcription. I know there's automatic transcription.
True.
Where it's like,
true.
There's audio and then they can type out whatever it is. But
that's
I don't
true.
know if translation
like we can talk into a Google
easy.
Translator right now, and it will spit something out that looks relatively like a translation. Mm-hmm. No, yeah, you're right. Actually, technology is at that point amazing. Is that not amazing? We're very close to the universal translator of Star Trek lore. We really are. Open your phone right now.
Right there.
Open your phone right now and open Google Translate and talk into it. Hey, what comes out is not a perfect translation, granted, okay? But it's real time, and is it close? I bet you anything.
Oh no, you know what? I saw
close.
a video on Twitter where it was a V Live with Jin, and it was like,
talking to Google Translate?
well, the person was playing it on their laptop.
Yeah.
The live, and she also had Google Translate open, but she clicked the audio, so it was like if you're talking into it. So she was like translating it live. So, and it wasn't like exactly right, but it was like pretty much.
Yeah.
So it's like all they have to do is apply that to YouTube, and it's like
and
YouTube,
if it's not if it's close but not quite, that just shows me that it's just a matter of refinement. Mm-hmm. Right? And they'll refine the technology where it will get closer and closer and closer. But the fact that we're even at this point where you can speak into something and it will translate live, not perfectly, but kind of, sort of, well enough, that's amazing. That's close to universal translator. That's Star Trek technology.
Yeah.
For those of you who are not nerds, Star Trek is a television show and a movie series. Sci-fi.
That's some very futuristic things on there.
Not going to say whether it's good or bad. There's some parts of it I like, some parts of it I hate. Anyway, the point is, the people talk in that show, and there's many alien languages because it's a sci-fi show, right? But they don't purport that everybody knows the same language. But what they do say is they just have like a device where you speak and it just instantly translates for the listener.
Yeah, like you hear your own language.
You hear your own
whatever
language.
They said.
But they were speaking their language, but you hear your language. The universal translator.
That's crazy.
And what is Google Translate at the moment? It's a universal translator. It is happening real time. Now, you can say, well, the translation's pretty crappy. It's very, very rough. It doesn't really translate exactly what I wanted to say. But is it close? But is it close? That the fact that it is even close is amazing, right? Mm-hmm. The fact that it is even close. It understood your voice. It understood what you were saying. It understood kind of contextually what the meaning of your words were. And then it translated it into a foreign language. Sort of. Not perfectly. Sort of. Right? Enough that a person who wanted to understand what you're saying could kind of look at that live translation and get the gist of it. they could sort of get what you're, trying to go after, right? That's amazing already, though. Think about it. That is amazing because all that means is this thing works. It just requires refinement, right? It just requires refinement, right? That's amazing. And if you're at that stage in any technology, there's no way to say except that is amazing. That would be like saying, hey, one of the greatest barriers we have right now in the scientific world is, can we travel faster than the speed of light? Because that's what we need to do if we want to get anywhere, really. Right? If we really want to get anywhere notable, we need to travel faster than the speed of light. If we travel anything slower than the speed of light, it's just worthless because things are just so damn far away that it's just not valuable at all. We may as well just be stuck here. We should just be stuck in our solar system because if we can't travel faster than the speed of light, then our solar system is basically, that's it. And this is where we're going to be until the sun implodes, and then boom, the end, if we even last that long. So just this is all we've got. So people who have all these dreams about exploring cool new worlds or anything, we have to figure out how to travel faster than the speed of light. Well, this would be like, we found out a technology where we can travel faster than the speed of light. But everybody on the spaceship that travels faster than the speed of light, they die. But the spaceship itself did travel faster than the speed of light. We've just got to perfect this thing so that you guys don't die on the space. That would be amazing. That would be considered groundbreaking. Even if, everyone on the ship died traveling at that rate. But keeping people alive would just be considered a refinement. We would just say, hey, we've got the core down here. We've got the basics down here. The basics of what we need to do, we have figured it out. We just have to refine until it is what we need it to be. We would consider that a monumental breakthrough. Same thing with Google Translate. The fact that it's so imperfect, I think it doesn't bother me at all. I'm still so impressed by it. It's amazing. We basically have a universal translator in my mind. Well, not exactly. Universal translator was a little different. Universal translator in Star Trek was actually able to understand new languages on the fly, based on syntax and context and things like that, and be able to interpret them and spit out something that people don't understand. Like you could encounter an alien race that you have never encountered before, and it would still be able to work, right? Google Translate obviously cannot do that. It needs to know the language beforehand. And even then, it still doesn't work perfectly, obviously. But it's still amazing, right? First of all, we don't have to encounter any alien languages that are just totally unknown. For now, the only thing we have to deal with are the various languages on Earth, which still there are many. It's a very difficult proposition still. There's tons of languages on Earth. So still awesome technology. But the fact that it can do that, albeit imperfectly, is still amazing. So yeah, we basically have a universal translator.
I'm just surprised why they had to hire humans to do it then. It seems like the technology's out there. All they have to do is just like run all their content through some kind of system.
Yeah. But it would be a very imperfect translation though.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe they need someone to understand the nuances of the language and like expressions and things like that. But I think it's good. And
they probably didn't want BTS to be misquoted.
Yeah.
You don't want you don't want the translator to just spit out something that was kind of embarrassing.
Oh my god.
Or whatever.
There's if you ever look on Weverse, there's some like really bad translations where it's like, okay, is that really what they said? Because that doesn't look right. Or when it's on Twitter and you click on see translation, it's like something weird sometimes.
Right. Facebook has see translation as well. I never trust it.
Yeah, it's like, wait, are you sure that's what they said? I don't know.
I mean, I trust it insofar as I hope that it's close, but I'm not going to fully trust it.
Yeah.
So
actually, yeah, maybe it is better that it's humans that are checking everything.
Well, I mean, the universal translator doesn't work yet, obviously. So yes, if you can afford it, then please hire one. But I just want to take a break to extol how far we've come technology-wise on that front. It is amazing. It is amazing. You can travel to a foreign country and not have to learn that foreign language. You probably get by. I mean, if all you want to do is like ask how to order food and stuff like that, right? You can totally get by. You can totally get by. Yeah.
Yeah, because if we had to take a trip to Korea or something, it's like, okay, learn in a week the phrases you
Yeah,
need
I
to
wouldn't.
know. That's too hard.
But then you can speak into a translator and say, "How do I get to this hotel? How do I order this food?" I'm pretty sure the translator would do that. Amazing.
Siwon from Super Junior was criticized recently for supposedly supporting Hong Kong.
Oh, I didn't hear this. Can you give me the details?
Let's see. On
He said something to support Hong
he
Kong.
retweeted something from Patrick Chow, who was shot by police during the Hong Kong protests.
Oh, I know about that. Yeah.
Yeah, let's see. In the interview, Patrick Chow said, "People can be killed by bullets, but beliefs can't be killed." So I guess Siwon retweeted that. And then later he unretweeted it because everybody...
Oh, too much pressure.
It says
Okay.
Chinese netizens have been giving him hate on both Twitter and Instagram.
Oh, okay. Chinese
and
netizens.
then, yeah, the Chinese ones.
Right.
And then later Siwon said on Weibo that he said he was only showing his interest in Hong Kong and he was hoping the chaos and violence would end soon. And
Right.
he's trying to say he wasn't taking a side. He just
Right.
didn't like the violence or whatever.
Okay. Well, I mean, as an American, it's probably no surprise that I tend to side with the people of Hong Kong, although a little bit less than other Americans. Well, let's just talk about whether he should be allowed to voice his support to people of Hong Kong. Obviously, I think he should be able to, right? But, Chinese, quote unquote, Chinese netizens will have a very different view. They
Right.
come from a more authoritarian culture, and a lot of them, they take a very poor view of people who speak up
Yeah, and
in
there's
support of Hong Kong.
there's no First Amendment over there.
Yeah, I mean, they just have different values. I support anybody who wants to support people in Hong Kong. I support that. Just in general, I think that people should be more free than not. I think more democratic principles should win out than not. But at the same time, it's a very dicey situation what's going on in Hong Kong. My personal view of it is that it's just such a complicated situation. Hong Kong is, as if you don't know, it was handed over back from the British to the Chinese in 1997, right? And they've been slowly integrating it back into China because it is China at this point, but it has not really operated as China since 97. It has a sort of a quasi-independent status. They sort of govern themselves, but not really. It is part of China. Push comes to shove, it is part of China. Okay, that is the reality of it. And I feel for the people who want to maintain their democratic rights because they grew up. So many of them grew up with these rights, right? You grew up in a democratic area run by Great Britain, so you are used to democratic rights. Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter is, since 1997, you have not been in a democratic country. You have been part of China, which we all know, for all intents and purposes, is not a democratic country. You probably should have made arrangements. You've had 20 years to move out of Hong Kong. That's really what you should have been doing. Now, I applaud you for staying and trying to maintain this, democratic bastion
Like they just want to keep it the
within
same.
China. Sure, wonderful. But how many people are you? You're like 20 million people at most, right? You're now absorbed by a country of 1 billion people. You are not going to win this fight. Really, you've had 20 years to make arrangements to move. It's really what you should have done. I don't think you should have stayed and fought for your democratic rights. That's just how I feel. That doesn't mean I don't support democracies. I support them everywhere. I support the free will of people everywhere. But the blunt reality of this situation is you were absorbed by China. You know what that's about.
Like China owns it fair and square, and of course,
Yes, China owns it fair and square.
They're gonna enforce China rules.
In 1997, when you were absorbed back into China, how old was Tiananmen Square? 8 years old. It was only 8 years before that year that China killed people in the streets for dissenting. That should have told you everything you need to know about the country that is absorbing you. And I think that as I never have anything nice to say about China. I'm not going to get into it, but because my family's from Taiwan, and civil war, this and that. But I never have anything nice to say about China. But in this particular situation, I think China's been more than fair to the people of Hong Kong. Because as far as I know, people were able to emigrate from Hong Kong, right? It wasn't like the Berlin Wall where, the next day, boom, there's a wall.
Like
you can't leave.
You can't go to a free
can't
country.
leave. Yeah.
Sorry.
I think literally in 1945, the Soviet Union put up a wall and they said, this is it. This is our Germany and that's their Germany, and here's a wall. China didn't do that with Hong Kong, as far as I know. And educate me if I'm wrong, but as far as I know, if you were a resident of Hong Kong in 1997, you had many, many years to make arrangements and try to emigrate, try to get your kids to be citizens of another country. These are all things you should have done. And if you had done them, you wouldn't have to be protesting in the streets for your eroding democratic rights. But let's be real. What did you think your democratic rights were going to do except erode? You were absorbed into China in 1997. What did you think would be happening in 2019? Did you think your democratic rights would be preserved? Now, I understand that China, on paper, agreed to a certain, a certain slow process to reintegrate Hong Kong that will last X amount of years. But let's be real, right? Let's be realistic about this. You don't know that they're going to stick to that timeline. That's not a guarantee of anything. This is not excusing, this is not advocating for the undemocratic ways that the Chinese government obviously prefers. I don't prefer them. I think it's an evil police state. It's emblematic of the worst parts of authoritarian societies that, communists are able to implement. By the way, don't vote for communists. This is what happens, by the way. But in this particular situation, you had since 1997. Your kids in universities right now, what is it? It's 2019. So your kids were born in 97. Why did you have kids and send them to a Hong Kong university in the year 2019? You really should have been making arrangements for your kids to go into a different country by 2019. That is my honest opinion. A lot of it is on you, And as far as I can tell, China wasn't making a large effort to stop you from doing these sorts of things. You should have disengaged yourself from Hong Kong. Now, I understand that it was tempting to stay because, for the most part, China let it operate as it had under British rule for a long time because it was economically advantageous. And Hong Kong makes a lot of money. The Chinese government liked that revenue. But you had to understand that it could have ended at any time. Any time the Chinese government could have just said, hey, we want to do this. And in fairness, the thing that sparked off this series of protests, I don't know if people are aware, if you're not educated on this issue, but here's part of what sparked it off. China just said, hey, our extradition treaties apply to Hong Kong. That's one of the main things. I'm sorry, but that makes sense for a contiguous country to say. They're just basically saying, hey, we have criminals and we want to seek them out. They can't hide in the territory of Hong Kong. Doesn't that make sense?
You can't have it be different in Hong Kong
than
the rest of China.
That would be like saying the US federal government wants you. You're a criminal. And you went to Portland, Oregon, United States. That's a city in the United States.
We do have stupid stuff like that.
We sort of do, but not really.
Sort of.
If the federal government really wanted you, they can come get you. They can. The city government cannot stop you. The state government cannot stop the federal government. They cannot.
Yeah.
But it would be like a city government telling our federal government, "Hey, I know they're a wanted criminal by the federal government, but you can't come into our city and take anybody." Could Portland do that? No. The federal government, if they really wanted to, could just come in here with guns, take people.
No, but right now they can just passively we won't tell you that there's people hiding out here.
They won't, but that's much different than what we're talking about. China, now, the city governments may not cooperate. Okay, that's fine. But they will not stop. Like if the FBI went into Portland and grabbed somebody and took them out, would the Portland police do anything? No, absolutely not. They absolutely would not do anything. Maybe they won't help you, but the the federal Chinese government is not asking for their help, as far as I understand. They are just asserting their right to go in and take a person, right? They're like, hey, this guy's a wanted criminal according to the country of China. We're going to come into Hong Kong and take him. And then Hong Kong says, no, we don't like that. And then China said, hey, too fucking bad. You're part of China. And then the people in Hong Kong just say, no, we're not really part of, no, but you see, that's where you're wrong. You are really part of China. And I know that sucks. I wouldn't want to be part of China. I wouldn't want to live in a place that is part of China. But you do. You honestly, you do. That's just the reality. It sucks, I know, but they have given you a lot of time to move, and that's what you should have done. So I don't feel that bad for them. I always support democracy, but for these particular people, I don't feel that bad for them. I don't even think it's necessarily indicative of democratic will, because although the people in Hong Kong feel a certain way, okay, I'm sure the majority of people in Hong Kong feel that they should have retained most of their rights, right? But you guys are citizens of China. How do the majority of people in China feel? I bet you anything the majority of people in China feel that you should fall in line, right? Just like if people in the city of Portland, Oregon, United States felt a certain way and like, oh, we shouldn't give up our criminals or extradite people to the federal government. But how do the people of the United States in general feel? They probably feel like, hey, Portland, shut up. If there are criminals in Portland, we should be able to go, the FBI should be able to go in there and grab them. That represents the democratic will of the United States of America. The laws of our land apply to your land. The end. I bet you anything, a majority of people in China would say that. Why? Because there's like 30 million people in Hong Kong. There's a billion people in China. If you had to put a vote to the country, I'm sure they would say that. So, sorry. This is what it is. I feel bad for you, but you should have moved out by this time. And that's that.
Yeah, and I haven't seen too many, like, any idols even talking about the Hong Kong and China situation. They're, like, not even going
of course
there.
not. It's so dangerous. It's like a landmine, right?
Yeah.
Because there's such a big market in China.
It's a bad idea. Don't even
You
comment
don't want to alienate all those customers in China. So many of them. You don't want to alienate them. And that shows you right there. What is the popular opinion of the Chinese citizenry? It's against Hong Kong. Otherwise, you wouldn't be afraid of how a pro-Hong Kong stance would play in China. You wouldn't be afraid of it because you would say, oh, the rank and file people don't even agree. No, but they do agree. They do agree. And you could say, oh, they're just brainwashed by the government or whatever. It's like, okay, maybe, but we don't know that for sure. I don't think that's necessarily even true. I think the rank and file people in China just they're anti-Hong Kong. They don't think these people should be acting up for what they're acting up for, right? They don't think that people should be able to be extradited from Hong Kong to China when they break laws of China. Hey, you broke a law in China and you ran to Hong Kong and you think you should be safe? Why should you be safe? Hong Kong is part of China. Most Chinese citizens agree with that. What is the larger issue? The larger issue is not even the extradition thing. The larger issue is that the people in Hong Kong are against this, China trying to reassert its control over the region. They're saying, this is our land, and we're going to run it the way we want to run it. And people who grew up in Hong Kong and grew up with the democratic freedoms that they enjoyed under British rule, they don't like it. But the reality of this is that, hey, British rule was 22 years ago. It's over, man. It's over. I'm not even saying that it was bad. I think Hong Kong under British rule was one of the greatest, freest, capitalistic areas ever. And I'm totally for that. But the reality is, it's over. It is no longer British land. It is China. You had 22 years to change your address. And that's what you should have done. And protesting now is just dangerous for yourself and futile. You should focus your energy on moving your children. Fighting the Chinese government is nothing good is going to come of it. Just look at what happened in Tiananmen Square. You could be dead in the streets. I'm sure there are a lot of Hong Kong people who are dead in the streets. Not as many as Tiananmen Square yet, but that could be coming. So please, don't do this. Just focus on moving. Just be thankful that seems to be an option that is available to you. Because not every authoritarian government has made that option available. But it does appear that that is something of an option that is available. So do it. Because you can't save Hong Kong. Hong Kong is China. The end.
Thank you to our guest, Morgan. You can find BTS Happy Hour on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, Podbean, and iHeartRadio. New episodes are up by Monday. Be sure to comment, review, or rate in the podcast platform you're using. Follow us on Twitter at OurBTS. That's at HOURBTS. Until next time, this has been BTS Happy Hour. Thanks for listening, and remember, make every hour a happy one.